All right, welcome to another Small Business Pivots. We have a very special guest from around the world today, and no one can say their name or business like the owner. So I'm going to let you introduce your name and your business.
All right, so I'm Ryan Drapela. I own a woodworking business called Drapela Works, a cooler company called Frio Coolers, and a YouTube channel called Cutting It Close.
Fantastic. And so we have a lot of small business owner as listeners, and so we're going to help them today. That's why they're listening. What do you think we're going to help them with the most today?
Knowing what's the one thing they should focus on more than anything else.
Let's make an introduction for the show, and we'll be right back. Welcome to Small Business Pivots, a podcast designed for small business owners. I'm your host, Michael Morrison, a small business coach and founder of Boss, where we make business ownership simplified for success so that you can own a business that runs without you. To learn more, go to businessownershipsimplified.com. All right, welcome back to Small Business Pivots. I am so anxious to hear your story. Give us a little bit about your journey growing up.
Yeah, so whenever I was born and raised in southern Texas, outside of a town called El Campo, and we were raised on a watermelon farm. So from the time I can push the clutch in on a tractor, I was doing that, and my little cousin would steer it, and then we're in a watermelon field picking the family watermelons, and we'd sit out front and sell watermelons. And my mom had animals, so whether we're raising miniature horses or goats or chickens or raising stuff for the fair, that was a lot of my childhood. So every day after I got home from school, I would pick up horse poop, clean water buckets, feed the chickens. During middle school, I milked a cow every day before school. It's just a real farm boy kind of childhood. And growing up like that, we were always trying to sell something. We didn't have a lot of money. And so whether it's watermelons in the summertime, whether it's jerky that I made from some animals, that we butchered, whether it was, chicken eggs, we were always just trying to sell something to buy the next bag of corn. I mean, that was a lot of my childhood. And mom always said it was going to grow character, right? When I'm out there scooping up horse poop, she's like, it's good for your character. And I was like, man, I don't understand it. This sucks. And looking back now, yes, because it doesn't matter if it was 10 o'clock at night, my mom would wake us up and make sure that we picked up every single piece of poop in that horse stall. We had 13 stalls.
Wow.
And so
you weren't raised in a good work ethic home, were you? It doesn't sound like you did.
That was that was the only thing we did was work. It was work first, and school wasn't even. We better make good grades in school and work when we're at home, and do school when we're at school. And we didn't really mix it too much. And so it was just a good old fashioned. Our family was all close knit. I could walk across the pasture and go to my grandma's house. Walk across the pasture that direction and go to my aunt's house, and just a good old farm boy growing up. Now, I wouldn't say I changed much, but
yeah. Well, I know your story a little better than others, maybe listeners do. So let's jump to the meat of this. You started a business at what age?
So went full time at 16. Never had another job since then. Growing up, worked in the watermelon field, as my summer job. I started buying all my own school clothes, all my own stuff when I was 13 years old. And I needed more money because I started welding whenever I was in 7th grade. So I was 13, 14 years old, was a welder, welded gates and balconies. I started doing quick math, and I learned I can make cutting boards during the summer and make twice as much as I did welding for $7.25 an hour. And so that summer of my sophomore year, or summer before my sophomore year, I started woodworking full time with a $75 miter saw, and I would work in the high school wood shop, and I'd come back home, and I'd work inside of a horse stall with a saw. And that's kind of when my business started, and I was treating it as a business from day one. I still have all the ledgers of $3 worth of screws, $5 of wood, and if it was free wood, I still always made sure what wood I would have paid for this wood. And during lunch or during wood shop, I would buy people's lunch. Lunch was $5, but they worked for me for an hour. And so I would get cheap labor by buying their school lunches. And I started making stuff for teachers, and just continue that on. It helped me buy my first truck, buy all my school lunches, buy all my school clothes. And I continued that from high school all the way through college. I went to Texas A&M, and went through junior college first, and then I originally went to Texas A&M because I just wanted to get out of Dodge, out podunk country land. And tell a funny story. I was in a grocery store when I was 20 years old. I realized that they sold ground meat at the store when I was 20 years old. I went there and I never knew what was in the tubes. And my girlfriend at the time was like, "There's ground meat in there." I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, people buy ground meat at the store." I was like, nobody, like, you. I thought everybody butchered their own cows and shot their own deer and ground their own meat my whole entire life till I was 20 years old. And I already had the business, I already had a couple of employees by then, but I had no idea about that part of life. So that was the original reason I went to college. And I knew I didn't know a lot. And so I just wanted to get out and about. So I moved 2 hours away and did that, and ran the business. So I could go back and forth every weekend up to college and back home and work.
At what point do you feel like you had a real business? I know it kind of started as a hobby and you treated it like a business, but at what point did it feel real?
Probably when I got my first employee. I was 19, hired my first employee. He's still with me to today. So he's been with us almost 10 years now. That's when I knew I had a real business. Before then, I'd still have friends come over. I'd pay them in beer and food, right? It wasn't until then that I was like, okay, I'm onto something. And I didn't even know what an LLC was really back then. I had a DBA, but I didn't know what a lot of stuff was. I just knew if I could make something for $1 and sell it for $2, I couldn't go wrong. And so that was how I did it. If he could make it even cheaper than me, then we're even better. So.
Yeah. So what would you say in those early stages? Because I know we have a lot of new business owners. What would you say is one of the life lessons you learned that is an essential to scaling a big business, or something that you wish you would have done?
One of the things that I'm glad I did that I wish others would do, because I was so young when I did it, I just did it. And it sounds so simple, but it's terrifying. And I think the longer you wait, the more terrifying it is. And the more you think about it, the more ways you're going to talk yourself out of it. Then you're going to talk yourself into it. And I will tell you, and Michael will tell you, that there is no business handbook. There is nothing out there that's going to prepare you for what you're going to come across, right? And so as you're going through this, you just understand, like, you won't. Give you an example. Here's a perfect example. I write a letter to myself every year, and I write it for the next year. So when I turn, let's say, 25, I write it to my 26-year-old self, and so on. And then I write it 5 years in advance. So my 25-year-old self writes a 26-year-old letter and a 30-year-old letter. On my next birthday, I open up that letter and read what I thought, right? And it was like, what I'm going through mentally, how the business is, how I predict what the future will be, all this stuff, right? I predict what's going to win the Super Bowl, all kind of stuff. And the most relaxing thing to me that has happened through doing this for a number of years now is that I am 100% wrong every single time. My numbers are always almost close, right? It's like you're going to be doing $1 million of revenue, but you're going to be doing it with this, right? You're going to be, you're going to have this situation and it's going to grow to here. And I am wrong 100% of the time. The only thing that's close to being accurate is like the numbers, but the way of getting there is so wrong. And it's really relaxed me, because now I know I'm more obliged to just jump in head first, because I know I'm going to be wrong, and that's okay. Because I know as long as I'm going in that direction, as long as I'm in that same ballpark, whether I'm on first, third, or second, as long as I'm playing in that ballpark, I'm okay. Like, as long as you're in that direction. And so to any business owner that's just starting out, you will make mistakes. There is not a doubt. You will probably be wrong a lot, 10 times more than you're right, but that's okay. That's my best advice. Like, it's okay. You will suck. Yeah. You will not be the best. Like, you will fail, and it's okay, because the other end of the spectrum is that you don't try and you don't fail and you never go after it. And so which would you rather have? Failures and trying to go after your dreams, or not doing it? Like, you decide. I would much rather go to sleep at night when I'm 80 years old and look back to myself and talk to myself and go, at least you tried and you jumped in and you got in the water and you started swimming, versus when I'm 80 years old, it's like, man, you never even jumped off the diving board. You never did.
Yeah, that's great advice for any business owner to remember, because sometimes we can get stuck in the weeds as far as, maybe we're looking at implementing a new CRM and we'll spend hours and hours learning it and this, that. It's like, no, dude, just start with the CRM, the basics, because it's whatever you're learning, you're not going to use in the future, or you're going to do it differently as your business evolves. So that can go with life. It goes with kids. Kids are the same way as a business. It's like all these magazines on the racks. It's like nobody's got that secret formula of how to get them to quit crying or do this or make them do something,
I have a newborn. He's 6 weeks old. And I'm learning that firsthand. I'm learning that, how are you going to deal with the lack of sleep? You just deal with it. There's nothing to compare you. You just deal with it. Like, you figure it out. If I had twins, it'd probably be twice as worse. But you know what? I would figure it out. And business is just like that. I mean, it's just, you figure it out. You don't know. You don't know till you know. And then when you know, it changes.
Well, and then along those lines, as business owners, I always say we don't know what we don't know. So, it's so you moved, you got into this business. What would you say? Let's go through the stages. So you were kind of a startup there and you got your first employee. And then most business owners after that, the honeymoon kind of is over. Now we have a real business and we have mouths to feed like an employee. And what do we do next? What did you do next? How did you take your business? Because if the listeners don't know already, you have a multi-million-dollar business. You have almost 30 employees or thereabouts with family. So we got a lot of talk about that too. But what did you do after that?
A lot of things that I have learned throughout the years. You don't want to put racing tires on a moped. Or another analogy, you don't want to enter a cow in the Kentucky Derby, because no matter how much you train that cow, it's never going to win. And so the best thing you can do when you're starting off, you're making sure you're not entering a cow in the Kentucky Derby, because no matter how hard you push that cow, it's not going to win. And so my advice to my younger self would be like, make sure you're getting in the correct boat, and making sure you're not going to, or making sure you're not entering a cow in the Kentucky Derby, because it's not going to win. Make sure your foundation is good and you don't grow too fast where you pick the cow. Make sure you raise up the foal, right? You raise it up until it's grown up big enough, and then you're like, okay, it's ready. And so what I did, I bootstrapped my way up. And I tell a lot of people this. I'm in the woodworking world, the CNC machines. People love them. I help people out with CNC businesses. And everybody wants to buy the biggest and best machine. And they think, that's going to solve their problems. And I always tell them, it's just another machine. It doesn't print money. One of my biggest things is called Gitmo, good enough to move on. So you get stuff good enough to move on so you can focus on the sales and marketing, because you can have, and I tell everybody in the wood shop this, you can have the most efficient shop in the world. If you don't have sales coming in, then it doesn't matter. And so by focusing on what matters most, staying as small as long as possible, because you're building that foundation, you don't know everything. And I say staying small as in the least amount of overhead as possible, not necessarily staying small, but having the least amount of overhead, being as nimble as possible, because you may change directions 3 or 4 times in your first couple of years to help yourself navigate and wade through those initial waters, that initial startup waters. And then when you have your first employee, you kind of sit back and you go like, okay, I have my first employee now and I'm selling this product, right? Or service. And if I can sell 1, can I sell 2? If I can sell 2, can I sell 4? If I can sell 4, can I sell 8, and so on? And dumbing it down that simple is what you have to do. It's like, what am I selling? And you don't have to don't go crazy. It's like, I'm selling this. Okay, I either have to charge more for it or sell more of this thing. And for me, I was making a docking station. I made a item and I sold it for $37.71. That was it. But I sold 25,000 of them. And,
wow.
when I was in college, we did $1 million in sales while I was in college with it. And so what did I do? I didn't complicate it. I just made that one product for 5 years straight. And that's the only thing I did, because if I can sell 1, I can sell 2. And I just keep doing that. And I didn't worry about anything else. I became the very best at that one product. And then the business kind of took care of itself, because I was more worried about getting sales and having all that come in. Now, granted, I made sure the efficiency was around 80 to 90%, so good enough to move on. But then I moved on and focused on, how can I make this product better? How can I make my customers happier? How can I turn a 1-star review into a 5-star review? And I guess more or less it revolves solely around, how do I make my product or my service so good my customers will talk about it and refer business to me? Because I spent $0 on marketing, $0 on ads those first 5 years, and I did $1 million in sales. Sorry.
What product is it that you're referring to, so everybody knows?
Yeah, so it's a docking station. It's called a ManStand, or I coined the name ManStand, and it holds your phone, watch, wallet, keys. You put your phone on your nightstand, it charges at night. I sold it on Etsy, and that's the only place I sold it at. And I mastered Etsy, and I mastered that product. That's how I did my first $1.5 million in revenue with. Before that product, I tried 100 different products, and none of them it didn't really work too well. And it wasn't scalable. It required me, everything I made before that. And then I guess to back up a little bit, before I hired my first employee, I was trying to do everything for everybody. I was a yes man. Hey, Ryan, and in woodworking, in woodworking, it's one of the only businesses you can start with like $500 and go into Home Depot and you become a woodworker. You buy one saw and everybody's now your competition. So like the barriers to entry to become a woodworker are very low. So it is very competitive. You don't even need a good skill set, because if you don't have a good skill set, you call it rustic. You call it rustic first. And so, when I was doing that, I was refinishing tables. I was, making cutting boards. I was trying to do cabinets. I was saying yes to everything. And one night I came home. This is when I was 19, before I came out the docking station. I came home and I was sitting at my computer at 3 a.m. And I was bawling my eyes out because I didn't know I was going to pay for college yet. I was still at junior college, but I moved away, and I was just bawling my eyes out. And I was like, this can't work. I want to be a millionaire. I have to make $3,000 an hour, because I didn't even know how employees worked at the time. I got to make $3,000 an hour. There's no possible way I can do this. I'm bawling my eyes out. I had no money. I'm broke college kids eating top of ramen. I watched this one webinar, and it talked about this one guy who made one product and did $250,000 with it. And I was like, what if that can be me? What if I just focused on one thing and that's all I did, and I became the best at it and grew my business from that? And from that moment at 3:30 in the morning, that docking station design popped into my head. I went down there, made it, and by 4:30 in the morning, I had the design ready, and that was the design that took off. And 6 weeks later, we did $40,000 in sales. And then after that, it took off. And it wasn't like I did $1 million. I mean, it was $1 million over 5 years. And so our first year we did like 50,000. The next year we did 150,000. The next year we did 450. Then we did 680. Then we did 1.6 million. And so that was kind of how the business grew. So we doubled or tripled every single year after that. But the amount of no's I had to say, I mean, I said no to everything else for 5 years. And I think that's an important lesson that I wish I could tell my younger self, even younger than my 19-year-old self, because I was saying yes to everything. And that killed me. I mean, when family asks you for the family discount because they want to help your business, it's like, and it still makes me angry today, because they'll still call me like, Ryan, you're a woodworker, I got this. I'm like, I have $1 million business. Like, no. And they're like, well, you're not going to help family. You're too big for us. It's like, no, I'm not too big for you. I just, that's not my business. That's okay. And so that's another lesson, I guess.
It's a powerful lesson. I share that with our business owners that we work with often, and that is establish your non-negotiables and stick to them. In other words, things like what you're talking about, family and friends. If they're true family and friends, they'll pay full price because they want you to succeed. That's how I believe. But
100%. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but 100%.
You're good. So speaking of family, so we work with family-owned businesses, and that can be a real challenge. And you told me earlier, you've got your wife and your parents and employees. How do you manage that?
Yeah, mom, dad, for watching. So whenever I was 21, so when I hired my first employee at 19, I was 21, just turned 21, and I hired both of my parents. My dad was a welder. He just had a whole bunch of surgeries because he was working on top of grain silos. He was 60 years old, didn't want him doing that anymore. My mom's always been a stay-at-home mom, but since I was 2 hours away, they would help ship stuff during the week, and I would drive home and help them out on the weekends. I'd make the products on the weekends. They shipped during the week when I was at college, and so I hired them full time when I was 21. So they were my employees number 2 and 3, which is a big risk. And it wasn't like they didn't have any retirement. So I knew I was going to be their retirement, and they were $80,000 in debt, and I wanted to get them out of debt. And so most people, the parents hire the kids, but mine was kind of reversed. I hired my brother 2 years later. And then my wife, when I started dating her at the time, she was my girlfriend. She worked for me, and now turned my wife. She's working with me as well. So I guess now I have 2 brothers, mom and dad, wife, and a cousin. And I've had about 5 or 6 other cousins, and we've had it where it didn't work out. And so I can give you both perspectives. I will say that the best thing about family, I'm gonna give you the best and the worst, and then I'll go through how I'm dealing with it. The best thing about family is that best thing about my family, could not be true about, somebody else's, but I know they're not gonna, my immediate family, brothers, mom, and them like that. I know they're not gonna steal from me. And I know if I need them to work 80 to 100-hour weeks for weeks on end, they're gonna do it. And that's very hard to find elsewhere. So what they lack in skill deficiency, they make up in just pure work ethic. And that was the way we were raised. So that's what I know I am getting from my family. We are not, by far, not the brightest apple in the tree, but we will work hard when work needs to be hard. And so it's my job to teach them how to work smarter because we were raised such hard working. The bad things about family is if you do not set the ground rules, stuff goes really hairy very quickly. With family, do never hire somebody you cannot fire. If you cannot fire your mom and dad and you want to hire them, then don't. I fired my mom for a year. This was 2 years ago. She wanted to help so much. I'm her baby. I have 3 older brothers. So I'm her baby, and she was protecting me. And it's like, oh, the business is getting too big. Let me come in and try to run it for you. And she doesn't know what she's doing at all. But as far as running the business, right? She's very good at shipping. And so she kept bulldozing over my other employees and, trying to, she was driving herself crazy. And so we had a long talk, and I've had multiple family talks, tell her to step away. And she, not good for 6-7 months. And then time heals everything. And she's like, you know what? That helped me more than I even knew, because now I can be a mother and not, your boss. I'm like, well, you never were my boss. I was paying you. But now she's learning to be a mom and a grandma and also work in the business. So that 6 months or that year away helps her understand that like the business will not crumble without her. Her son can do it. He is okay. I've also had aunts that worked for me, thought they were the best thing since sliced bread. And they thought, most family thinks the business will crumble without you. And so sometimes you got to kind of show them, hey, like with or without you, the business will still succeed. And once they learn that and say, if you want this thing to succeed, you will help me grow it. But like, whether you're here or not, because you are still an employee, it will continue to grow, right? I'm driving the ship, not you. And so that was, I have to do those talks about once a year. I get all my family together and say, this is what we're doing. And I have it written out. I have it written out on a piece of paper. Here's what we're doing. Here's why you're involved. Here's why I love having you, family. Here's why I love you, mom and dad. Here's why I love you, brother and sister. This is why you're here. This is why I want nobody else but you to be in my business. But here's why this is my business and not yours. Here's why I'm running the show. Here's why. And it's okay. I have 10 times more stress than you. You don't want that stress. You want to go home and barbecue on Saturdays. I'm working. Like, it's okay. And so I have it written down. I give them all pieces of paper, because when I didn't do that before, mom would say, oh, you said this. And my aunt would say, no, he said this. He harped on me this way. And then now here's all the pieces. This is exactly what I said. So none of y'all get it twisted. And so it sounds like it's hard, but I promise you, like, that's really helped. So just being very upfront with them on like, this is what we're doing, why we're doing it, why I love you, why I want you on the team. But this is also why I don't have to have you on the team as well, because, this is what I'm looking for. This is your KPIs. You're no different. When you have family, you're going to have employees that aren't family, and they're going to look and be like, oh my gosh, they're family. They're always going to get treated better than me. You make sure that the other people know that the family is working the weekends when they're at home. Whenever, there's a family barbecue, half days on Fridays, let's say, and all the family takes off on a Friday, just know, like, you know what, that's the family perk right there. And that's okay, because the family also worked Saturday and Sunday last weekend when y'all are at home. And that's why they get to go to this family barbecue. It's a family business. It is what it is. And that's really helped my employees over time, because they understand, like, it is family. It is okay. But that family, they're going to work harder than me. They're going to just nose the grindstone, and that's okay. Every family member that is within the business now, we have one common goal. And this is something that I learned to do over time. I've learned this. So I did leave that out. We have one common goal. We're going to buy a ranch one day with the business. So the business is going to grow so we can buy a ranch one day, so all the family can move there. my mom's going to have a clubhouse in the middle, and and my parents are going to have a clubhouse in the middle where all of us go and party. And then each brother is going to have a house with a golf cart trail leading up to that clubhouse. And that is the goal of the business. And so everything we do now, everything we talk about is about the ranch that we want to get one day because of this business that we're growing. And so that has really helped center our focus on why all of us are working together. And so I asked my 80-year-old self, it's like, would you rather, Ryan, move somewhere else and not have any family working for you and get the business, buy the ranch and invite them on there, or grow it with the family? And because of the family, we get to buy this ranch together and have it because we all work together. Even though it may take a year or two longer, it is still it's a more beautiful way of life. And, it's a way cooler story doing it that way than doing it the other way. And so, I don't regret having family. I love having family working for me. And yeah, we're on one big team now, but you have to make sure you set that direction. We are on a team, but I am team captain, and It is okay.
I love that story because there's one word that you said that I preach all the time, and that is you're listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is sponsored by Boss, where business ownership is simplified for success. Boss helps business owners create a business that runs without them, with business consulting from business coaches who have actually owned businesses before. Small business funding and loans, some in as little as 24 to 48 hours. Online courses, workbooks, classes, and much, much more. Go to businessownershipsimplified.com to learn why small business success starts with Boss. If you're enjoying the podcast and want to stay up to date with all of our episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, or leave a positive review. Let's get back to our guest now. I love that story because there's one word that you said that I preach all the time, and that is goals. So in other words, your North Star, I call them guiding principles. And so you just kind of shared the importance of if you have a goal that everybody can strive towards, it works a lot better. Your notes to the family. I mean, you have purpose. You're intentional about the things you're doing. And so that really helps a lot of these challenges that a lot of business owners have because they don't have any goals. They're just there day to day putting out fires and things like that. And speaking of fires, you didn't have a fire, but I want our listeners to know, if you're watching on YouTube, it's a little glitchy. We're not too bad. It's not too bad on your area, but at the time of this recording, you just had a hurricane and you just got power back. So the hurricane, the name of it was
Barrel.
Okay.
Yeah,
and it blew through. You've been without power for days and you just got the power back. That's tragedy, I guess, in business. How do you do that as a business owner?
I look at things I can control, and that's the only thing I can focus on. What can I control? I mean, think about this. The year I graduated college in 2019, my first full year in business was the COVID year, right? And then after that, interest rates went up to 10%. And man, I think if I was just born 10 years earlier, I'd have great interest rates and then I'd have COVID. But what can I control? I can't control that. I can't control the interest rates. I can do my best part, make sure I'm getting smart financing, right? But, what can I control? I control my work ethic, and I can control how prepared I am. And so when this hurricane was happening and I was without power and all that, I'm either enjoying, resting up because I worked multiple 80-hour weeks in a row, whatever, cool. Or I am planning on, okay, whenever the lights turn on, we are ready. We have this person in this position, this person in this position, this person in this position. So it was more or less just a waiting game because, that was not fun, and we still we didn't have our internet tower got blew down. And so when I was, we're in the dark, I was planning, okay, if we did not have internet, what are we going to do? And so we had multiple people bring different Wi-Fi routers from their house. And, we have little hotspots set up all around the shop. And we're running 12 computers right now off of hotspots. Wow. And so just control what you can control. I mean, I couldn't control the hurricane. If I did, I'd turn it, a little bit more that way.
Yeah, I understand. Well, let's talk about systems and processes. People call them different. Do you have those in your business, and how important are things like that to the success of your business?
Oh, they're everything. They are the business. I mean, the business is a system of systems, right? It's a system of processes, a process of multiple systems, whatever way you want to word it. that is the most important thing that I've learned over time. And writing down those systems is very important, because if you don't write them down, one, you have to train them every single time, and it has to be you training them. Two, you don't know why you do the things you do in a year from now, because you think like, I made this system and process at the time for this reason, and then a year later you don't remember that reason anymore, and so you end up trying to learn the same mistake again. You're like, oh, that's why I did it. And it's like, don't do that. Like, never try to learn the same mistake twice. Make it once. Make as many as you can first mistakes. When it's a second mistake, that's because you didn't write it down and you didn't learn it. And so whenever I'm doing systems and processes, I'm in manufacturing. So we have a system for every single product. We have a process for every product. I mean, my business is one of the few that manufacture, market, sell, and fulfill the product. And so I have a full out manufacturing facility, connected, right? And we have shipping and logistics, and we have sales and marketing. So most businesses are sales and marketing and some services, ours is all encompassing. So we have to have systems in place for every part of the business. And it took me a long time to learn what a good system looked like, but now we're getting it down, and it's not a finish line. It's continual progression of developing more and more systems. So
I thank you for sharing that, because we work with so many business owners, and we always start with kind of your guiding principles, like what is your North Star? Where do you want to go? Let's talk about that. What does your life look like in 5 years? Let's talk about that, so we have a direction. And then, but once we get to systems and processes, some of them bail on us. They're like, Michael, we work 10, 12, 14 hours a day. I don't have time to sit down and do that. So how did you get past either that mindset, or how did you find time to do the systems and processes?
I think you have to have that North Star, like you talked about. You have to have that goal in mind. And, one thing that, referring back to the letters that I wrote to myself, like, your goals may change, but they don't make them any less important in today's time. And so, like, people tell you like, oh, it's not about the destination, it's the journey to get there. I say, cool, right? But I still want that ranch. Like, and maybe when I get the ranch, that isn't all it's cracked up to be, and I'll be miserable there. Cool. But that is my North Star. And I don't worry about other North Stars, because it's okay. Like, that is my North Star. Do I know that the grass is greener on every side of the pasture? Yes. But that side of the pasture is my pasture, and that's where I'm going. And so setting that goal and having that guiding light makes making the systems worth it, because you just do reverse math. Like, if you want, I don't know what it is. Like, for me, I want a $10 million ranch. And so what do I have to do to get to a $10 million ranch? Well, I either have to sell my business for about 20 million, or, have 2-3 million coming in every single year for multiple years in order to get this ranch. And so I just reverse engineer it and go, okay, well, what kind of systems, what does that look like? And how do I grow something to be that big so I can afford this goal that I have in life? And I don't question why I have the goal. A lot of people used to harp on me I used to harp on myself and get really down on myself on, like, let's say you're a car guy and you want a Lamborghini. Like, don't make other people's opinions of you on, like, oh, Lamborghini, you're just a materialistic guy, or, oh, I want a Ferrari. It doesn't matter. That's your goal. It's your shining star. It doesn't have to be anybody else's. It's yours. I mean, I don't care if you want an ice cream machine made of gold. It doesn't matter. That's your dream. And so having my dream and being solely focused on it, and then going, okay, what kind of system can I make so I can achieve my dream and my purpose in life? And my purpose in life right now is to buy my family a ranch. And that's and maybe when I have the ranch, you can talk to me then. I may have a different purpose. I may want to do underwater basket weaving. I don't know. But right now is to get the ranch.
So the systems, you said you're kind of perfecting them or getting them better. And I always say that they're always a work in progress. They're living, breathing documents that will always change as you buy new equipment, as you reduce an employee size, whatever it is, logistics, your systems will change. So what's a good starting point for those that are, I just can't find the time type of business owners, to say, just start here?
To know that whenever you start, like, the system it's an infinite thing, right? But we do 3 iterations of a system typically. The first iteration we design the system. Let's say it's, I don't know, how to quote somebody, whatever, right? Or how to put in a sales order, whatever it is. You do it once, just dive in and do it. Jump in the water, right? Just dive in head first, okay? Dive in head first, you do it once. Then you sit back and you iterate it, and it's going to get 50% better. And it's not going to take you much time to figure out how to make it 50% better. And then the next time you tweak that system, it's going to get about 10% better. And then it's going to get 5% better. And after that, it's going to get tiny little increments better. And so what we do 3 revisions and then we move on. That's what we've allowed ourselves to do. And we don't get in that perfection trap of trying to create the perfect system. It's like, let's get this system. And some systems, 95% of systems don't have to be perfect. They just have to be, you just have to have something there in place. You can always go back and revisit it and make it better because things will change. But us doing the 3 iterations, going in 3 iterations over a 3-day period, right? Not long. You spend 30 minutes on an iteration because you're not trying to make it perfect. You're just trying to make it a little bit better. And then you move on, you go to the next system. That has allowed me to jump in a lot more head first and not have to worry about that perfection trap. Because a lot of people, they sit back and like, oh my gosh, like it's so daunting. I have a 1,000 kind of systems. Like I have, how the customer walks in the door and how do we greet them? How do we put in the order? How do we do all this? It's like one system at a time and just tweak it once or twice, 3 times max, and then move on to the next one and have your list. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. I mean, imagine me, I have 30 or 40 different products that I'm making, and I make it from raw wood to finished product. And there is, 20 different stages on each different product. And so there's 20 different systems on each. So we have, 300, 400 different systems that we have inside of our shop just to make the product. That's not to fulfill it, not to market it, not to sell it. That's just to make it. And so, are some of those systems maybe a little bit inefficient? Yeah, but at least we got one. At least we have it.
At least you have something on paper. You have something documented. That's what I say. If you can just have anything documented, that's better than nothing. So I kind of want to wrap up in this one little area of business, and that is your marketing. So you have, I believe, 100,000 followers maybe on YouTube, 20,000 on TikTok. I know a lot of people struggle with that as business owners. On the digital side, what is your best advice that you found to kind of get to those numbers? Because I know a lot of marketers and influencers will say it's not about the numbers. And I say, as a marketer myself, I beg to differ, because if you're not in front of people, no one knows about you. So yes, we're not all about the vanity metrics. We want to make sure we have the right people, but how do you get in front of that many right people?
So I have 100. Yeah, we're coming up. I think we're like a couple hundred away from 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Like I said, like 20,000 on TikTok. But that's with my cutting it close. And so that is where I teach CNC in business. It has zero to do with the sales and marketing of my woodworking business and my cooler company. Now, that's probably a mistake that I did over time, but it has nothing to do with it because I don't want to teach woodworkers how to beat me all the time,
Right.
So, I'm not going to teach them here's the products I make. Here's how you should beat me. But I do teach a lot of like woodworking and stuff like that. And I do teach them, all of the things that I've learned along the way, but I don't necessarily show them the exact products I make. So for Drapela Works, which is our bread and butter, we are not very big on YouTube. We have like 100 subscribers. We don't really post much on there. I think we have 3,000 on TikTok that we just recently got. And like for my woodworking business, we have done less than $10,000 in sales because of social media and Facebook ads. Okay. I'll say that with the caveat of we have done over $1 million in sales because we are on social media, but not directly influenced because of a post. Social media for my business right now is validation. So it validates that we are real, that we are alive, that we have a heartbeat, that we're not Chinese, because a lot of people try to impersonate our products. And so what social media is for my business is we post semi-regularly to validate that we exist. Okay. And that's our marketing strategy and that's our social media strategy. Our marketing strategy is to make products so good that they talk about us and word of mouth travels. And so we brand all of our wooden products, right, with our brand and logo. And so 80% of our traffic, 90% of our traffic is organic, that it came to us over time because we bootstrapped it and we have a ton of products out there. And so that's my marketing strategy for the wood side of things. It's the social media is just to validate that we exist. Now for cutting it close, where I'm teaching and I'm coaching, and I do sell like some wooden panels on there and some bits and stuff like that, bits and blades. That's a different story where like it's very hard to grow organically that way. And so you have to do a lot of sales, or you have to market, and what you look for, on there, and why I've been able to grow is because I only talk about what I can talk about, and I only show what I can show. And so whatever makes your product or your company uniquely yours, show that off. And the more volume, the better, I have learned over time, because unless you're at 1 million subs or something, 1 million followers, you need to post a lot. That's just, was it Gary V, I believe said it? Gary Vaynerchuk. He's like, if you do a post a day, if you do 365 posts, one a day, you'll never have money problems again. And I've heard that, and it is a volumes game. The more eyeballs you get in front of, the better. And like the letters that I write to myself, you're not going to be right. And so like your first post is probably going to suck. Your first 100 posts are probably going to suck, but that 101 may hit. Our Drapela Works TikTok, we did 40 posts in a row, and we had less than like 1,000 followers. We did every single day, 40 posts. And that post number 41 got a big 600,000 views, and we got 2,000 followers from it. And so now we have 3,000 followers. It's like, no, we had one good post.
Yeah.
We had one good post. Don't think, and we did make a lot of sales from that post, but it wasn't until post number 41, and so for anybody that's out there that, is looking at social media, like for woodworkers, and my last lesson, I'll bring it home. For woodworkers, a lot of times they don't know who their audience is they're speaking to. So for woodworkers, they'll show themselves making the product, right? Like, oh, look at me make this table. Well, what does that attract? That attracts other people that want to know how to make tables.
Right.
It doesn't attract the interior designer that's going to buy that table and stage it in a house. And so for my woodworking business, for Drapela Works, instead of showing how we make all of our stuff, we show us how we package it and how we send it to customers. And we tell a story about, like, we do these wooden piggy banks now as one of our biggest products, a wooden piggy bank. And so we'll grab a wooden piggy bank and engrave it with the kid's name. Let's call it a Riley, right? We'll engrave it with the R Riley. And then we'll tell a story about this famous Riley that was on, let's say National Treasure, and talk about that. And that gets our customer demographic, because it's a Midwest housewife that has 2 kids, right? That it wants to buy something for their kids that are under 3 years old. And so like we're targeting that audience. And so it took us a long time it took me 10 years to figure that out. That was one lesson, is like, make sure what you're doing is actually targeting the people that you want to target. If you're, like I said, most woodworkers get it wrong. They want to target, oh my gosh, look how I do this. And it's like, nobody cares. Your audience doesn't care. Like, other woodworkers care, but nobody else does. So,
well, and I will just lump in all business owners are that way. Most business owners don't know who their target audience is. And so that could be why they're struggling as well. Well, you've been a blessing to many today with a lot of golden nuggets. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, follow you, what's the best way to do that? Probably
going to be Cutting It Close, the YouTube channel. That's probably the best way. Or Ryan at cuttingitclose.com. That's my email. Or Ryan at cseworkshop.com. Follow me on Cutting It Close. And that's the easiest way to find me, because that's the biggest channel. And I'll reach out. I'm still on it day to day.
Fantastic. So last question for you, if you were in front of an audience of various small business owners, what is one piece of advice that you would tell that would be applicable to all of them?
It would be focus. Become a magnifying glass. The best analogy I can give is you can hold a piece of glass in the sun, a regular piece of glass over a piece of wood in the sun for 1,000 years, and it will never burn it. And you take a magnifying glass and you hold it over there, and it's going to burn it within 5 seconds. Wow. That's what you have to become. You have to take all of that energy and focus on just one thing, right? Whether it's one product in your business, whether it's just your business, right? So you want to focus it just on your business. But the more you hone that focus down, the more you will not believe what you can come up with. And that's something that it takes a very long time to develop. That means saying no to most everything. That means when you wake up, you're focused on the one thing. That means, like, for what I do, I sit back and I think for probably an hour every day on what's the one thing I can do today that if I do it, all other things in my business become easier. And I ask myself that question every single day. And it takes me a long time most days to go, that's the one thing that'll move the needle forward. I will do that until it is complete. And that's the only thing I do until that needle is moved. And so focus.
Excellent advice that we all need to be reminded of often. So I appreciate you again, Ryan. I'm glad you all are safe. Glad you got your power back. Appreciate you taking time out to share with our audience today while you're sitting there going through all the debris and things that the hurricane caused. But we thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for listening to Small Business Pivots. Please don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast. If your business is stuck, you need help creating a business that can run without you, or you need a fast business loan or line of credit, go to our website, businessownershipsimplified.com, and schedule a free consultation to learn why small business success starts with BOSS. If you want to talk anything small business related, email me at michael@michaeldmorrison.com. We'll see you next time on Small Business Pivots.